So you've got to create that perception in the market. They're willing to do aggressive deals. They're going to take care of tenants. You're going to be deal makers, and you're going to, you're going to fill your building, and you're going to make that a special place to be. And there's a lot of factors that need to be involved in doing that. But I think it can be done, and you just have to change people's perception of that building. Yeah. That building does not plan well when you need to have equality and uniformity of offices across a floor. Mm-hmm. And so, therefore, I think 500 Monroe is not a good perimeter office user building. And I think because of the depth of between the core and the window line on the south side, it's much better for a larger cubicle intensive type company.
I think another challenge is the lobby, and we've talked about this before. It's some people love the lobby, some people hate it, although I think probably a larger percentage dislike it. I think it's just dark, it's got this old, staunchy feeling to it.
It has a 80s feel to it.
It needs to be brightened up. That white box is so key. It amazes us when you go through and people say, oh, great existing conditions. If you don't like them, remove them, but they're great existing, we're going to price it in. And then you just can't see it. The light doesn't come through. Mm-hmm. It's an open user, and they're saying, well, okay, well, you can gut this, but you can't see it. Clients
spend the money on the demo and improve the white box, and it's money well spent.
I think in terms of increasing occupancy, obviously most people think of amenities of the building, and for a lot of my clients, parking is extremely important, and that's a building that definitely has a lot of parking, and I think that bodes well for it. I think figuring out creative ways to maybe even include parking for certain deals, maybe increase the ratios. Obviously there are some Class A buildings that are west of the river, of course 100 North Riverside, 525 Monroe, which I would call a B+ building, but there are some nice buildings that are west of the river. Some of them have pushed the pricing up for west of the river buildings, but I think that it's been challenging from my perspective to see clients wanting to spend what I would call higher rents for a property that is west of the river, when so many buildings that were built during that same generation from the late 80s to the early 90s, when roughly 12 brand new Class A buildings were built, are what would be described as West Loop or Central Loop opposed to west of the river. And I think that has played a role. I think being west of the river has had an impact on the buildings, level of interest among some of my clients who are Class A candidates. So I think that the economics in that building and where deals are going to get done are going to be extremely important.
So 500 West Monroe, if I was going to describe it in one word, it would be stately. I think it's a stately building. I had a client I put in there just over a year ago, and financial service firm, and the first thing they noticed was the lobby. And I think it's a very nice lobby. I think it's tasteful, not very contemporary, but it's got kind of a timeless classic look to it. And so the outside of the building is also very timeless, and it's a nice look. The floor plates are fine. They're not super efficient or super large, but at the same time, they're good for. It could be good for multi-tenant floor users. The biggest challenge has been the pricing. Their pricing expectations on it have been, the low 20s net for mid and high rise. I think they need to lower that in this market, but then again, they do have the biggest block available, so for the right user, they can, lease that up, get back to a relatively market lease occupancy pretty quickly. Largest parking deck in the city of Chicago, attached. That's huge.
Consider it one of the nicer Class A buildings in that part of the West Loop.
It's got good ceiling heights, good views, obviously the large block of space. The building's a little bit stigmatized because of the ownership problems that have been going on over the past 12 months. So I think to just put it back on the map, it would be important to make an aggressive first deal in that, because memories are short. That would eliminate any of the past issues.
Changes to the building and the space. Lightening it up is certainly something. Changing the the access to make it easy, even easier, the flow easier, and just light common areas has become an important issue.
So probably all that we would suggest looking at sprucing up all of the multi-tenant corridors in the building as well as the main lobby. Additionally, although you have a gym within the building, even for gyms within the building, it's a little bit small. So we would suggest perhaps expanding that a tad bit.
Infrastructure is extremely important. HVAC is extremely important. So most tenants are asking about power, access to riser space, and then HVAC as it relates to state-of-the-art systems in terms of minimum variable air volume.
Everybody knows that 500 West Monroe has got a large block of space available. I think it does need to, in the future flyers, it needs to be clearly stated that deals can be made now and that there's money for tenant improvements and concessions that can be done immediately versus avoiding going through any court process or going through multiple owners or any issue like that. They need to know who the owner is and that it is owned free and clear, or if there's a direct line to the lender, that there's no muddy waters.
I've stayed away from the building, really. Just knowing that everybody's been, the flight has been out of it because it's just been a concern with the capital stack. The parking is ideal. I mean, it's great. There's no other parking deck, indoor, heated, with that size and that volume of parking in the West Loop. I don't know that tenants or brokers really know that. I don't know how much that has really been highlighted. Appeal to the trains, obviously, it's perfect, right? You can't complain about that. A lot of people come into both trains. It's equidistant between both buildings. So that building is always going to be on the radar from that perspective. As far as the floor plates go, they seem fine to me. I had a tenant that was looking at 100,000 square feet in the late 08, early 09 time frame. The building was a runner-up. The floor plate was fine. The only thing about it that I remember that wasn't even that problematic was that you were blocked on one side, but by the AT&T switch building. The standout issue from a negative standpoint is a little bit on that view, but more importantly, really kind of the amenities in the building, the retail. It's a nice, opulent, late 80s lobby, with a waterfall and all that kind of cool stuff, and that's nice. But from having like a decent food service in the building, and I can't even think right now, I don't even know if there's food service in the building. From a pricing standpoint, this chaos that the ownership has been going through could eventually work to Piedmont's benefit. The market is returning, right? And there's not a lot of big blocks of existing space. The building has been frozen, essentially, and so some of the large deals with 2013 expirations have avoided it or even moved out of it. So the timing is pretty good to get control back.
With the growing lack of large spaces in the market, we're talking over 100,000 feet, and you want to be West Loop, 500 probably couldn't time their massive vacancy any better, because if you're 300,000 feet, what are you going to throw into the mix? You're going to throw in Sears, you're going to throw in them, and
well, 500 West Monroe I think is a terrific building, and I think that you actually could be hitting the market at a really good time with the building, because large blocks of space in the West Loop are very small. I actually just did a survey for a 30,000 foot tenant for Class A West Loop above the 30th floor, because they wanted high rise, and I only came up with 4 buildings, and of those 4 buildings, I would say, I would call 2 of them A-. So I think the building could be, hitting a good time. I think it's going to, certainly for a big user, it's going to be, practically the only game in town at a certain point. And the building itself, I think, is terrific.